I have biology coming out of my ears. That is a lung. It was taken out of a salt flat over in England by Gary Evans. And when it dried up, it looked like this, and he cracked it open, and he could see all these little tubes and things in here. The black is vein blood, all right, which is going to get recharged with oxygen and turn red. All right, this, you can see, this is just nothing but stone. And when he broke it open, this is what is inside, and here's what it looks like when he put a little moisture on it. There it is right there. That's a cross-section of a lung. And the red part is where it's starting to infuse with some oxygen. And this is the used blood. That's a lung. And I have them here too. I got tons of them. I got them coming out of my ears. Here's the ones. This one's DNA tested. All right, that's the fabric. Still has all the fascia on it. I drilled a hole right into the blood. I mean, literal blood. This one had blood in it, and this one's already stripped of the fascia. It was in a different condition, and it ended up turning into silicates. Because there's so much silicates in the water. Every hole, and lungs had a lot of holes. They filled up with silicates. Now this one didn't get to that because the fascia facilitated the fossilization. That was my original, and I think there's still some papers up there called fascia facilitated fossilization, which the membrane is what protects these. All of the fleshy stuff actually burnt off, boiled off. We almost got hit by Venus. The amount of energy that everything boiled, basically. They said the water's boiled. I don't know about the oceans completely boiled, but I do know that probably most of the lakes on Earth and all the rivers and so forth boiled. They were being impacted with so much radiation, there's nothing that could happen other than that. Now this one here, you see this? All these little red spots came out. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them with blood. There's little balls of blood come out. The blood stays inside of here. Blood, it preserves extremely well. Look at this. You want to see something? Phil Harris, a friend of mine. Unfortunately, Phil passed away, but this goes back, got to be 7 or 8 years. I put out a challenge. I said, if you go out and you can't find a mud fossil in 10 minutes, then I want to hear from you. Nobody has ever been able to not find one. Phil went out, and in a couple of minutes he saw this. He went out into like a wash area, and he saw this little red spot, and he said, I wonder what that is. He wrapped it with a hammer, and it split right across where the plumbing comes into the heart, and there is an exact seam across there. And this was still had, look at the red blood. Red blood. This is the blood that's used up. That's the vein side, and I'll show you what it looks like. And these are other areas of the blood pumping out of here. Now here's what it looks like anatomically. Well, here, first of all, look at this. This is where the blood's coming up into these two different tubing, and this big one, the red blood, is starting to turn black, and they're all starting to change colors because of oxidation. Blood and oxygen, they work together. Those are the two things. Now, here's what that looks like at the top. You see this here? This is the kind of stuff you got right at the top. It chops right across here. That's the vein. The blue is always your used blood, and the red is your artery blood. And here's what happens right here. It breaks right across there. It's almost a smooth line. Now I have some. This is a heart right here. All right. This is the aorta, right atrium or whatever, and this right here is the seam right down the middle. And it's got, some plumbing up at the top. This is turned almost into 100% silicates because all of the blood washed out of it, and it all depends on where it is entombed, how long it was in the waters for, how saturated the waters were with silicates. Did they have a lot of blood in them? Did they have a lot of kidney juices and enzymes and so forth? Because your body creates all kinds of enzymes. That's what all these different little organelles in your body do. They your pancreas and all these different things, they create enzymes. Enzymes do all kinds of chemistry very, 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 very quickly. So there's a lot to consider here, a lot, and I've just considered all of it. I got a pretty good handle on this. So I'm going to show you. I didn't really, I guess I did talk to her. Hold on. Okay, this is Mary Schweitzer, and she was literally destroyed, basically, in my mind, for talking about this soft tissue dinosaur stuff, because it changed everything that they were saying. It's not millions and millions of years old. They were very recent. And she considers herself a creationist. You see, this is crazy, totally wrong. This is, again, Lidya Tarhan. A big part of that answer involves figuring out how the fossils were able to form. I show exactly how, and we can make them today. The animals themselves were entirely, this is totally wrong, entirely soft body. They lived before the evolution of shells, teeth, bones, anything. They're typically the only parts of an organism to become fossilized. The whole thing turned into stone. That's why they can't accept it. And it's all on above the surface of the earth. Almost everything I have came out from rock walls around my property. And the things are gigantic, and they are DNA tested, 3 of them, and CAT scan, 7 different CAT scans on smaller ones. They're big enough I could send off. And everything proves out exactly what I'm saying. And now, like I say, I forced Yale into making up and saying, yes, Roger was right. They should have just put Roger was right. Okay, I saw this years ago on 60 Minutes. It was 12 years ago. This one goes back 10 years. This is on the BBC, and they're talking about Mary Schweitzer discovering these T-Rex blood cells and being basically destroyed. Now, here's what they're going to show. It's only 3 minutes long. Let's just listen to it. The problem. Dinosaurs, they fully understand there was dinosaurs. Yeah, they were all over the place. There's all kinds of dinosaur bones. Bones are not the issue. I'm talking stones. I'm talking pre-dinosaur era. The type that I literally forced Yale to admit existed. Because they say that was even before there was any life. There was they had no bones, they had no hard parts whatsoever, 100% soft, and it's totally wrong. They were just like us, only they were gigantic creatures, and they turned to stone. All right, this is Mary Schweitzer. She's the one that found the soft tissue. Now, I tried to engage with her, and it didn't actually work out too good. And this was right very early on, because I had been doing this very early on. I actually wrote David Attenborough back in 2014. He wrote me back. And I thought he knew about mud fossils, because I thought I saw him show something on mud fossils. He said he didn't know anything about it. But he did write me back. But anyway, she says, I don't care what they say about me. She stares down all her opposition. And basically, if they'd have been nice to her and listened, and we had people that really cared about truth, everything would have been different. But no, they don't, and they can stand against anybody. They have a wall in front of them. You can't penetrate it. I figured for sure I was going to get through with my book and everything. Nope, not a bit. And that was 9 years ago. Okay, I'm just going to let this play. This was how they treated Mary Schweitzer. This was on TikTok, I believe. Somebody just sent me it from Facebook. But watch this and see what you think.
Is the scientist that was the inspiration for the lead character in the blockbuster movie Jurassic Park involved in a conspiracy to hide the most shocking discovery in recent scientific history? This is Dr. John Robert Horner. Known as Jack, Dr. Horner is arguably the most famous paleontologist in recent history.
You consulted on that movie.
I did consult on all those
And they
movies.
said that the guy, Alan Grant, was you.
Yes, well, fortunately, he didn't get eaten.
A fervent atheist and outspoken supporter of Darwinian evolution, it was Dr. Horner's team back in 2007 that shocked the scientific world by finding soft tissue in dinosaur bones.
We all know that bones are fossilized, and so if you dump it into acid, there shouldn't be anything left. But there was something left. There were flexible, clear blood vessels. And so here was the first soft tissues from a dinosaur.
Something nobody believed could happen. This is Dr. Mary Schweitzer, the scientist who made the discovery that there were soft tissue dinosaur bones.
This is the piece.
No.
She showed us video she took under the microscope.
That's really what happened?
Yes.
That's the dinosaur bone?
It looked like the soft tissue she would have expected to find if it had been modern bone. This was impossible. This bone was 68 million years old.
So you see this, And you think what? You say
Didn't want to tell anybody.
you'd be ridiculed,
Yes.
right?
Mary Schweitzer attended Montana State University in Bozeman, Montana, where she first met Jack Horner. After attending a lecture that Horner presented on dinosaurs, she introduced herself. "Hi, Jack. I'm Mary. I'm a young Earth creationist, and I'm going to show you that you are wrong about evolution." "Hi, Mary. I'm Jack. I'm an atheist." Jack Horner proceeded to convert Mary Schweitzer from a young Earth creationist to an old Earth evolutionist.
And he's found the perfect partner in his protege, Mary Schweitzer.
And so I said to my technician, okay, do it again. I don't believe it.
And yet, in sample after sample, they were there. Things that looked suspiciously like flexible, transparent blood vessels. She finally mustered the courage to tell Jack.
Why would she have to muster the courage to tell Jack that she may have possibly just made the most important discovery in recent scientific history?
She said she dissolved the bone in there and there were blood vessels. And, I was like shocked. I mean,
How could that be?
How could that be? That's right.
Science and Jack had a problem. In order for Darwinian evolution to be remotely feasible, they needed deep time. Jack's main area of research for the past 20 years is the belief that dinosaurs evolved into birds, something that obviously would have taken a tremendous amount of time. He also believes that he and his team will be able to build a dinosaur out of bird DNA.
We have discovered that dinosaur DNA and all DNA just breaks down too fast. We're just not going to be able to do what they did in Jurassic Park. We're not going to be able to make a dinosaur based on a dinosaur. But the chicken is a dinosaur. I mean, it really is. I mean, you can't argue with it because we're the classifiers and we've classified it that way.
The possibility that the soft tissue and dinosaur bones found by Jack's team were found because dinosaurs were actually here tens of thousands of years ago rather than tens of millions of years ago wasn't an option for Jack. On a phone call that was never supposed to air, longtime radio personality Bob Enyart offered Jack Horner $20,000 if he would be willing to carbon date his and Mary Schweitzer's soft tissue discovery.
Hello.
Hello, could I speak to Jack Horner?
Yeah, let me transfer you over to his office.
Hello, Jack. This is Bob Enyart with KLTT Radio in Denver. Jack, I sent a letter to Bob Harmon a few weeks back offering the museum a grant of $8,000 to do a carbon-14 date test of that soft tissue T-Rex you guys dug up. And I'm wondering if you saw that or considered it.
Well, Carbon 14 doesn't work on something that old.
I understand that, and normally we wouldn't expect to get soft tissue out of a T-Rex skeleton either, but sometimes science proceeds by crossing your T's and dotting your I's, and in fact, in the last couple of weeks, I've been able to raise a little more money that we'd be honored to give you guys if you would consider doing that test.
Well, we can't do that test.
You can't do that.
No,
Do you mean the museum doesn't have the laboratory?
we certainly don't.
Okay, well, we're happy to pay the expense of having a lab do the test in addition to the $10,000 to the museum.
Do you know how carbon 14 works?
Yeah, I'm familiar, and I realize it's useless for anything over maybe 50,000 years or so. Jack, is the amount too small that it's just not worth the consideration?
No, that's not it.
Okay.
Let me tell you where I'm coming from here.
Sure.
All right. Obviously, your group is a group of creationists,
Yes.
and the spin they can get off of it,
Right.
doing it, is
Well,
not going to help us.
yeah. So even though it's just a scientific test, they're not asking for voodoo or
It's
anything.
not actually a scientific test. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Carbon-14 dating something with soft tissue in it. Jack, if I could raise $20,000, would it be worth?
I will talk to Mary Schweitzer about it.
Okay, I appreciate that.
I want to know what group is sponsoring it.
Okay, it's
I need some really specific details about.
Sure.
And don't tell it to me straight, okay?
Of course. I've hosted a daily talk show for 15 years. We're on a 50,000 watt AM station, KLTT. And there's a local church here that's offered to help.
Okay.
So we could, if you guys agree, we could send you the check within 24 hours.
Okay, well, let me talk to Mary, and let me just talk to a few people.
Okay.
Because I don't want to, I can't afford to have it turn into a circus.
Right. All right. Thank you so much, Jack.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
So Jack spoke with his people, and the test was never allowed to be done. What are they afraid of? The excuse that there isn't carbon material in this soft tissue is very likely untrue. They've found collagen, blood vessels, protein, all organic material that can be carbon-14 tested.
Basically, this is what we're trying to do. Take a chicken.
Not only can it be carbon-14 tested, which I don't go along with anyway, but it can be DNA tested, which is what I had my giants. I had them DNA tested and anatomically scrutinized, and there's literally no question whatsoever that they are giant human beings, or at least the lung is a human lung. That's no question whatsoever. This one right here, it's the size of us. And it was DNA tested, CAT scanned. There's no question what it is. Now, the bigger ones, which are giants, also they're anatomically exact, even with fingerprints, grip skin. And those were the little parts of them were DNA. Well, it was DNA tested and it was CAT scanned as well. So what I'm showing is real. And what kills me is the giant part. They cannot accept that. It was all written about, and now Yale says, yeah, these things there's no more of these things there anymore. They were all wiped out in this pre-life flood. Really, they say life started after this event. Basically, that's what Yale is saying. They don't exactly say they wiped out everything on Earth, but they do say that they're outright bizarre in appearance, do not resemble any organism alive today. All right, and they want to understand their relationship to the complex animals that evolved shortly after that, which is what the life we have now, which are normal size to us. Back then, they were giants. I mean, absolutely enormous giants. All right, once again, for the 500th time, here's Typhon attacking this giant fish. Written about in the ancient text, the fish was being attacked by Typhon, who was a monster that covers this whole North Africa, all the way back to here. There's a dragon. And here's his dragon throat, runs all the way down, and it was cut by Zeus right there. And bled out in the desert, you see it? All of these are his dragon scales, all the way up his throat, you see it? All this is just bloody runoff from the dead carcass. And here's his head, right there. You can come up here and look at it. It's very easy to see. There's his red flared eye. Look up Apollodorus 1.6.3. Right? Apollodorus 1.6.3. It says exactly that. The gods, which Venus was a god, changed themselves into animals. Venus changed herself into a fish, and she didn't make it. All right, now that's just a personification of Venus. Venus, I'm sure, is still, they're immortal, so they appear to have been turned into the landscape, as Ovid said, by means of violence. It's exactly what it says in Metamorphosis. And he says they could change into anything: fungus, rivers, constellations, moons, anything they want. And they did. So I'm telling you right now, Mary Schweitzer had a hard time, but just think of what I've been through. Talking about this stuff. The only way I could talk about it, because I don't care about a job or any of that stuff, that's all long ago for me. I couldn't care less about that. And I don't care what anybody thinks about me either, because I'm looking for truth. And if you're going to go for the truth, you better not worry about what they're going to say about it, because you're going to be in trouble if you do. You see, here's his tail, way, way, way out here. See it running off? See that running off there? Running off over here. These are the dragon scales tail. Look at his dragon scales. And the blood has run down into this area, and that's where all the blood is running out. Wherever you see that runoff, that's bodily fluids. It might not necessarily always be blood. And this was an avian creature. You know, Horner was right. The dinosaurs and all the reptiles and avian birds, they all have the same cloaca. They have a cloaca. And it's right over here. And what that cloaca does, it takes one side is the poop and one side is the fluids. All right, and it comes down together and they poop. And that's what hits your windshield. All right, so, and that's coming right out of the pooper. And the people live in there because there's plenty of fertilizer. I mean, poop is fertilizer. That's why they're living there. All right, you don't see them living over here in the middle of nowhere land. There's nothing up there to eat. There's no poop. All right, so this is, you know, if you got time, come up and look. These are all the scales. The fish would have been going that way. There's his tails back here. And he spit all this fire right down on his skin, on his scales, and ate right through, right down to the blood vessels. Go get a doctor. Ask him what that is. These are arteries. These are blood vessels. The blood vessels give way to capillaries, which are the little capillaries, and they feed off into the lymph and the veins. It ate right through his whole skin, his whole body. These are little blood vessels, and in all of this is, you see the stuff growing in this red blood. It loves red blood. Things will grow in the red blood. Desert doesn't matter. All right, and that was all eaten down to this far on the fish's body from him spitting all that stuff down. So Mary Schweitzer, I wish her the best, but they really assaulted her something terrible, and all she was trying to do was show that they weren't 100% right about the fossilization process, and they're not even close. These are all fossils. All right, and look at the blood. Look at that's a lung, and that's probably 3,500 years old. If it was in the correct conditions and the correct salt, because your body is a salty environment, and it has to be packed in a mud, which is, it doesn't even know it's dead, because that mud is nothing more than flesh, and it surrounds the membrane. The membrane had turned into a barrier. That's why I call it fascia facilitated fossilization. The membrane itself became the separation zone between the rest of the world and the mud fossil. This was a membrane. You see, it's just looks like a rock, but that was a membrane originally, and inside of it was the blood and all the tubing from the lung. This is outside of the lung. And this is all real stuff. And poor Mary Schweitzer, I feel bad for her. And they're still not doing what they should do and investigating this. Yale has had to do something because of my book. You know, and all they have to do is admit they didn't get it right, and look at what I'm talking about. We get somewhere in life. But there's a lot of hatred of God and Jesus Christ. First thing out of Yale to me by Derek Briggs is, oh, well, you must be a creationist. Yeah, I don't know. What is a creationist? I didn't even know. I'm not kidding you. That had nothing to do with me. But when I found the giants, I started to think, wow, these things they were talking about in the past could very well be real. And I figured, well, Yale would be really interested in this. Nobody was, not a single one. But Yale really messed me up terrible, because everybody would say, you're right down the street from Yale. And I am, about 20 miles from Yale. And they say, why don't you take it to Yale? And I said, well, he won't talk to me. He just keeps telling me all I got is rocks. And they go, well, yeah, that's all you got then. That's it. Case closed. See you later, idiot. So, and now they agree. Everything I said was right. They agree. But they want to twist it enough so that they can fit it into this 540 billion years ago, or whatever it is, 500 million years ago. It's insanity. This stuff is 3,500 years old. All my stuff, and Velikovsky reported it very, very well, and that's why I wrote the book. It was called Mud Fossils and Velikovsky and Minds in Collision. He wrote Worlds in Collision, and that's what caused all this havoc. But that was 3,500 years ago. It was at 1500 BC. Let's go with that, 1500 BC. So that was 3,700 years ago. And there's all kinds of things written about this time. There was all kinds of upheaval on the earth. And many of these ancient texts appear to have very, very solid factual evidence that supports them. That's what I go for, is the evidence. Everybody's, oh, well, you gotta have the evidence. Yeah, well, I got the evidence. Nope, don't want to see it. That's the problem with academia. They can destroy you from afar and never let you have a statement. It's just like that dad, Jack Warner. He wouldn't let Mary Schweitzer test any of that stuff. My stuff is DNA tested. All right, I had this done back in 2014, 2015. I think it was 2015. And the lab that did it got terribly assaulted and we're no longer in communication, and it didn't end up well because they just got assaulted by academia, and I don't know how it affected his business, but that's what he was doing. Now, what they did, they extracted the genomic information from 3 mud fossil samples. I didn't send them the rocks. I sent them what I extracted. So if I tampered with it, and I tampered with it, I didn't. They're still available for testing. There was a 36-inch tip, a lung, and a mud tip. The lung I showed you before, and they did, this was all DNA extraction and all very, very complicated tests. It took, I think, 3 months. And they did all these different, I don't know what they did, but they tested it for this certain regions in the DNA, and if they were there, it means specific mitochondrial DNA markers. That's what they tested for. And if they could find these exact DNA markers, it was not the whole DNA sequence, but then they would know it was human DNA. So they did all of these things. Negative controls were always negative, and 2 of them were extremely dense. The mud tip wasn't as dense, but I mean, it was still good DNA. These were excellent quality sequence from the 36-inch tip and the lung. All right. The other one wasn't quite as good, but it was still good. Now, this is what it came out: Homo sapien, that's human, mitochondria, cytochrome B, and D-loop region. And I said, "You're 100% sure of this?" "Oh yeah, no question whatsoever." "What you sent me," he said, "but make sure you tell everybody what you sent me the extraction, not I sent him a big rock to take the extraction out of." All right, I don't swipe them off the outside. I drill into them. And these were, I mean, this is as deep as you can get. This was a DNA test. All right, now I'm not going to show you the guy's name again because he got assaulted basically, and they're probably still going to do it again. But this was a perfect. The quality was excellent. It was literally blood. Let me show you where I took it from. I'll show you. All right, this is the lung. I extracted it from inside a cavity and just took the really raw red blood out of there. This thing is literally saturated. I put a little moisture on here, and the blood just rehydrates almost instantly. You see how red that is? Hold on. Excuse me. All right, you have to drill inside of these. And if you drill inside, you can get down into where the blood is. And in the lung, it's just saturated. It's just 100% blood. There's blood everywhere. There's blood everywhere in this thing. Because it's a lung. That's what lungs do. They saturate blood and they move them around. So I drilled down inside of these. This one and the giant one. Let me show you the giant ones. All right, this is a hand. It's a left hand, and that's the tendon that runs down. The palm is right here, and that's the little cleave right between the pads of your hand. This silver stuff is what they call, or well, I call it grip skin. Some of them call it friction skin, but it's the real dense layer of skin, highly keratinized, thick, tough stuff, and it peels right off of here. This is a very, very mud fossil. It was in an area where there was nothing but mud, and it just continued to be soaked in that mud for who knows, well, since the Great Flood, about 3,500 years ago. Now, don't forget the grip skin, and don't forget this is a left hand, and it's huge, and this is a fingertip from the hand right here. All right, and I have CAT scans of this. I'll show you that in a second. Now, and I have knuckles and all kinds of stuff. I got a lot of, well, not a lot, but I got enough. Well, I'll show you. You can't be missed anyway. This is this fingertip. You're never going to see this stuff without surface scans. You see that? Jesse Garant and Associates did 7 CAT scans for us. And you can see things you would never, ever see. You never see that. That's where the fingernail was. And that's this right here. That little spot right there is where the tendons lock in. And they're on other, I have other ones that have the exact same architecture of that little cut right there. There's something that lays right in there and locks in, and that's what it can really pull against these steps. You know, the body is constructed, it's just stunning. And there's an apical tuft in here, which is back here. It sits right up here. And that's where all the tendons come out, and they lock into these balls. And I have one laying around here somewhere. Hold on. All right, here's an apical tuft right here. What this does, it is actually right there. And all these little tendon straps come up, and the balls, there's only one left. It's still attached. All these other ones have broken off and ripped out of the sockets. But that would stay right here, and that's what gives your finger the ability to do this. Now, where do you see the CAT scan on this? Again, here's the end. I broke this piece off just to get down in there and look into the blood. But when I first had a CAT scan, it was complete. So this side and this side, I'm going to show you, and this side right here is the bone. It fractures away from the bone. But if you don't know what to look at, you say, well, it's just a piece of rock fell off. No, the bone is here. This right here and this right here are the tendons. Now watch. Let me grab that shot. You see, take your time and look. This right here is where the bone was. Of course, it's turned to mudstone. This is the vein side. That's why it's got darkness. That little hole right there is the vein. This is the tendon that comes up to your fingers. One side and the other side is identical. You see it? Take your time and look. You see that center? That's this center right here. You see this tubing? That's the same as this tubing right here. You see that hole? That's the artery. Artery is just a bleed right out. So you don't see any real color, but you see the hole. You see the hole right here, and then you see the color around it. Now, the bone is offset, which means it's a thumb. Bones would normally be in the center of your fingers. The thumb is the exception. You see this? This is a right-hand thumb. If you pull your skin in right here, you got a lump that hangs over the side. That's this. That's the only fingers that do it. The finger that does it is your thumb. So that's what that is. And you would never see any of that if it wasn't for the quality of Jesse Garant's equipment and absolutely stunning work they did. Absolutely stunning. And again, you cannot get bones and so forth inside these. The best we could get was shadows. Now let me show you. Where is it? All right, here. Now this is going down inside, and don't forget, this is what's called nucleophilic substitution. This you would never know that was flesh and bones and blood and all that stuff. Well, because it's been transitioned. That means it's been transformed because it just absorbed all these other things. However, there will be little spots that you can see, and here it is right here. You see it? That's that right there. That's that. All right, that's the bone. And you can just barely see the shadow of it, but it's clearly there. And then, of course, these are all your blood vessels that come up to service the tip. And this is the bottom, and that's where the apical tuft is. Right here. See, actually, you can actually see the thing right there. And if you look up an apical, if you look up distal phalanges, you'll see right at the tip of the fingertips. This is what. Well, I might as well show you. Hold on. Don't forget. There's that little ball right there. There it is. It's just exactly identical. I mean, it really is identical. Where do you see the fingertip? All right, right that very tip. The tip that's hanging right off the very end there. All right, that's the apical tuft. It sits right at the tip of the distal phalanges, the end of your fingertips. Now, it's all loaded up with these tendons. You see all these little tendon balls? They come into those little tendon ball holes. And that's how they anchor your fingers. Okay, I'm pretty sure this hook right here is caused by this, because this is exactly where it is on the finger. Right above this, up here, is the apical tuft. You see it right above it. So here you move up, and that's where the apical tuft is. Of course, it's inside, and that's the one ball that's left on there. Now, and that's the fingertip, and it twists and does all that sort of stuff. All right, everything I have shown you changes, literally everything. Geology is nothing like they say. History, nothing like they say. The ancient texts look to be pretty accurate to me, and they've all been considered just silly. You can see academia has no interest in the truth whatsoever. It destroys their whole realm. But it's time for that destruction to happen. It's just crazy to continue to pay them these exorbitant amounts of money to be told, you have to say this or we'll call you stupid. But you say, but this isn't true. It doesn't matter. It has no difference whatsoever. And again, the only reason Yale made that paper was because I had them against the wall. And it's still plagiarism. I don't care how you look at it. That was my work from years before, including DNA, CAT scans, and everything else. And now they're telling everybody, oh, no, this is 540 million years old. It's all on the top of the Earth. It's just laying on the top of the Earth. And it's going to be easily tested. And you have to go back to Velikovsky's work. This is a problem. They have taken over the minds of people, and they literally did a thought police. If you go against them, they'll destroy your life. And I'm serious. They can destroy your life. No problem whatsoever. Happens every day. Okay, I had a little bit of interaction with Mary Schweitzer. It didn't go too well. She was under a lot of pressure and so forth, but I feel really bad for her. She says right now, she says in 2017, I don't care what they say about me. She stares down the attackers. But I was surprised to see she was at the University of North Carolina, I thought. But now she's at this North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. I don't know if they're associated or what, but I'd like to have somebody tell me, did she get removed from North Carolina? Because somebody just got a hold of me and said they were willing, that's what they told me. They said that they thought somebody at the University of North Carolina was willing to do some DNA testing of specimens. Now, that's the last I heard of, and that was only minutes ago. So let's see if that's true. But I haven't found anybody willing. Even the same people that I had my test done, they're not willing to do it anymore. And nobody is. Because the same thing like that Jack Warner, I don't want to open a hornet's nest. Well, science is a hornet's nest. You have to make assumptions based on the evidence. If you don't have any evidence, the assumptions are meaningless. But if you have evidence, which I do, coming out of my ears, and a DNA test and everything else, I mean, it's not even deniable. This is what really bothers me. If I didn't have this overwhelming volume of evidence, I wouldn't be upset. Now, Mary Schweitzer had enough evidence that she shouldn't have been dismissed either, but I have so much evidence that it's just ridiculous that they can dismiss it. DNA, CAT scans, specimens. There's not a human being on the face of the planet can't see what they see. But if you want to be accepted in the academic realm or not fail your classes, you have to do what the teacher says. I don't think that's right. I think there should be some recourse here. Anyway, I love you all. I guess all I can say is do whatever you think is right. But at some point, we got to stand up for these things. I don't know how you can do it without getting destroyed. That's the problem. I don't care about that, so I'm sort of in an unusual condition here. And there's a lot of people that are retired too, like me. Why should they care? You know, I know they also get attacked by their friends and family and everybody else because they're just not willing to go along with the you know, the common lingo. As soon as you start bringing these things up, they feel like you can see hostility break out almost instantaneously. So I pretty much stay on my own. Seriously, I don't see any reason to intermingle with other people now at all. You know, although some of them maybe want to talk, but I haven't found any. Not around here. And as a matter of fact, one of my biologist friends, not biologist, he's a geologist, I'm sorry. And he's a really top-end geologist. And he still floats around in that realm. And I said, what do your friends, I think I asked him, I said, do you speak about this to your friends? That's what happened. And he said, oh yeah, I talk about it all the time. I said, really? These guys are geologists and they talk to you about this? He says, well, mainly they argue. That's all. That's all it is, one big argument. It doesn't matter what you have for evidence. So anyway, that's my buddy Jim. And he's a senior geologist for the Army Corps of Engineers. He's just retired, so, and he says, yeah, you're right. He says, we didn't realize any of this stuff. He said, they taught us, here's what this is, and here's what that is, and here's what the other thing is. These are the names of the stuff, and here's their characteristics and so forth, which is true. I can see the characteristics. I know what they are. I know what feldspar is, and quartzite, and limestone, but there's all different grades of all of those. So there's a lot to take into account here. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. Again, I love you all. Just do what you think is good for you and truth. Oh, by the way, I didn't show you the other giant fingertip. This is the other one, excellent quality DNA. There's the fingernail. All right, now this is the kind of stone you can't get any DNA on from the outside. There's no way. It's like about this thick, maybe this thick down. You can start hitting blood. So I smashed this off with a hammer. This is about 3 feet long. 36-inch tip, I called it. And when I did, it came off and it still had the fingerprints on there. The fingernail is right up here. These are the fingerprints. You see the sweat pores? This is that heavy-duty keratinized skin. I told you it's a grip skin. That was what was peeling off that hand. And it's also peeling off of a Maro Maro, which is a comet coming through space, and which is a finger, big long finger, 1,300 feet long. Now this was from a giant, approximately 200 feet tall. It's on my property. And I got other body parts from this as well. I have body parts laying all over the place. They're just everywhere. I finally gave up on collecting them up. Nobody listens. Nobody wants to know about this because it's just too spectacular to absorb. And it changes everything that you've been taught. Literally everything. It has for me. Even chemistry, physics, everything. Space. Space is loaded with these body parts. As a matter of fact, I have some coming through space right here. You see that? That's a meteorite. They call it a stony meteorite. Cooked off. You see it burnt up? That's where blood was on this side. Exploded out because it was still wet coming through the space. You see that? See that circle right there? There's another circle here. There was another one right there. That's where your tendons lock in. This is just unbelievably detailed. And that right there is one of these tendon entices that ran over the strap. And I believe that's like that one of those little cuts that goes across there I showed you before. And this is one that came from the Earth. This is a giant fingertip came through space. All right, let's remember this. This one was on Earth. You see the little tab right there? You see the little tab? This is exactly the same fingertip. These are the veins. That's a vein, that's a vein. This one right here is a vein, and that one right there is a vein. They don't blow out. The veins don't blow out. They turn hard and black. You see it? See that black spot right there? The artery side is all red and bloody and it flows right out. It turns into, in this case, garnets. That's where the blood would have been. And on this, the same thing on this thing. Only that exploded out as it came through space because it overheated and it just exploded out of the body of the fingertip. Same fingertips. One's a little bigger than the other one, that's all. And one was here on Earth and this one came through space. We have so much to think about. It's staggering, literally staggering. So until you stop and start to listen to this, go back to all my old videos. I got zillions, 2,800 videos. And I had to do this. I have to do more than one a day because there's so much that needs to be discussed. And it won't be discussed. And if I just drop it, it drops. And that's just not going to happen. So once again, for about the 11th time, I love you all. All right, stay tuned. It's day by day.